The following weeks unfolded like soft echoes in the halls of the Blake estate. Emily and Jonathan began to move through their strange new reality, neither master and maid, nor lovers in the conventional sense, but to broken souls learning to heal each other. Jonathan's health was fragile. He often grew tired after short walks in the garden, yet he insisted on joining Emily when she watered the roses. He said the fresh air reminded him that he was still alive. Funny, he murmured one morning as she helped him sit beneath the willow tree. I spent years in penthouses overlooking the city, but I never really saw anything. Emily smiled faintly, adjusting the blanket on his lap. Maybe you were looking too high up, sir. He chuckled, a sound that seemed to surprise even him. And now I've fallen just far enough to finally see what matters. She looked up from the flowers, meeting his gaze. You haven't fallen, sir. You've come home. Something in those words struck him deeply. He turned toward the sea, eyes glimmering. You always say the simplest things, and they somehow make me feel like I've wasted half my life chasing noise. She hesitated, then said softly, sometimes it takes silence to hear what our hearts have been trying to tell us. Days passed. They spent afternoons reading together. She would read aloud from his late wife's favorite books, her voice filling the mansion like music. And in the evenings, when his cough grew worse, she would sit beside his bed, humming until he drifted off. The staff began to notice the change. The house was no longer haunted by grief. There was laughter now, gentle, hesitant, but real. One evening, after dinner, Jonathan asked her to join him in the music room. It had been untouched for years. The piano covered in a white sheet. Play something, he said. I don't know how, she admitted, brushing dust from the keys. Then learn with me. He smiled. Let's make noise together, imperfect, but ours. She laughed, pressing a random key. The sound was uneven, but pure. Jonathan followed, his frail hands finding another note. Together, they stumbled through a melody that wasn't written anywhere. It was improvised, human, flawed, and heartbreakingly beautiful. When the final note faded, they both sat in silence, staring at the piano as if it had just confessed their secrets. Jonathan finally said, You make dying feel like living again. Emily's throat tightened. Don't say that, sir. You're not dying. Not yet. He smiled sadly. Maybe not, but if this is how the end feels, then maybe I've already found peace. She turned toward him, tears in her eyes. You're not alone anymore. You never will be. He reached out, slow, cautious, and brushed a strand of hair from her face. Promise me something, Emily, he whispered. Promise me you'll live your life. Don't bury it in memories of me. She blinked back tears. Don't ask me to let go before I even have to. Weeks turned into months. Their arrangement became more than a promise. It became a partnership. Emily took him to doctor appointments, made sure he took his medicine, and stayed by his side through sleepless nights. And Jonathan, in return, gave her what no one else ever had, belonging. One afternoon, she found him writing by the window, papers scattered around him. What are you working on? She asked. My will, he said simply. And a letter. For who? He looked up, his expression soft. For our child. The words hit her chest like a gentle blow. Our child. It wasn't a transaction anymore. It was something sacred, something born from the ashes of loneliness. He handed her a folded page. Would you read it? Her hands trembled as she unfolded it. The handwriting was shaky, but strong. To the life I will never meet. If you ever wonder who your father was, know this. I was a man who learned too late that love, not wealth, is the only thing that endures. And if you ever look into your mother's eyes, you'll see the reason I believed again. Tears slipped down Emily's cheeks before she could finish. She looked up, unable to speak. Jonathan's eyes shimmered with unspoken gratitude. You've given me the gift of knowing I won't die forgotten. She moved closer and, for the first time, took his hand without hesitation. You were never forgotten, Jonathan. You just stopped being seen. He held her hand tightly, his thumb brushing her skin. And now I see everything. Because of you. That night, Emily stayed beside him as the rain began again. The thunder rolled far off, gentle this time, almost like a lullaby. Tell me something, Jonathan murmured sleepily. If I had met you 20 years ago, do you think I would have been a better man? Emily smiled through her tears. You might not have been rich, but you'd have been happy. He laughed softly, coughing between breaths. Then maybe that would have been enough. Silence settled. The rain whispered against the glass, and she felt his hand grow still in hers. Jonathan? He looked at her, eyes warm. You've made me forget I'm dying. She bent forward and kissed his forehead, her tears falling onto his skin. And you've made me believe love doesn't need forever to be real. He closed his eyes and whispered, then maybe I can rest. But she wouldn't let go. Not yet. The following morning, when the sun broke through the clouds, Emily stood by the balcony, feeling its warmth on her face. Jonathan sat in his chair nearby, wrapped in a blanket, smiling faintly as he watched her. You look like the dawn itself, he said quietly. She turned and smiled. And you look like someone who might just see another one. He laughed, weakly, but full of life. With you here, maybe I will. Can love that begins in tragedy still be pure, or does its origin define it forever? Share your thoughts in the comments below. The night sky over Manhattan was restless, streaked with silver clouds that drifted past the moon like passing ghosts. Inside the Blake estate, all the lights were off, except one. Jonathan Blake sat in his study, his breathing shallow. A letter trembling in his hand. It was from his lawyer. It confirmed what his doctor had already said. Prognosis terminal. Estimated months, not years. He laid the paper down beside a half-drunk glass of whiskey, his reflection rippling in the amber liquid. Once, he had dreamed of living forever, not in body, but through empire. But now, the numbers on his balance sheets meant nothing. What was the point of billions if there would be no one left to whisper his name? A gentle knock broke the silence. Sir? It was Emily, holding a tray with tea and honey. Her voice was soft, careful. You didn't eat dinner. He looked up slowly. You're still awake. I couldn't sleep, she said with a faint smile. The rain's too loud. He gestured toward the chair across from him. Then sit. Let the storm talk while we listen. She hesitated, then obeyed, setting the tray between them. For a while, neither spoke. The crackle of fire filled the silence. Finally, Jonathan asked, Do you ever think about what you'll leave behind when you're gone? Emily blinked. I don't have much, sir. Maybe just the way I treat people. My mother used to say kindness lives longer than names. He smiled faintly, pain flickering behind his eyes. She was right. Kindness outlives stone. A long pause followed. Then, as if the words were dragged from his soul, he said, Emily, I need to tell you something, and I need you to hear me with your heart, not your fear. She nodded, a nervous chill running through her. He took a deep breath. My doctors tell me I won't live to see another Christmas. Her hand went to her mouth. No, I've known for months. He continued. Heart failure. Slow, merciless. There's no cure, only countdowns. Tears welled in her eyes. There has to be something. There's nothing, he interrupted gently, except one thing I've never had. He looked at her now. Not as a servant, but as a soul he trusted. I've built skyscrapers, funded hospitals, bought silence from people I once called friends. But I've never had a child. No one to carry my name, my heart, my hope. Emily's lips parted, but no words came. Jonathan leaned forward, his voice trembling. My dying wish, Emily, is to have a child. Not through greed or lust, through legacy. I want to leave a piece of myself behind. Something pure, something born from kindness, not ambition. The room seemed to freeze. Emily's heartbeat thundered in her ears. He saw the fear in her eyes and lifted a hand, shaking his head quickly. I don't mean to frighten you. I won't force you. I'd never take what isn't freely given. But I can't die without asking you this. Would you help me fulfill that wish? Her breath caught. You want me? He closed his eyes, nodding. You're the only person I've met who sees me as a man, not a wallet. You have purity I thought no longer existed in this world. If my child could have even a fraction of your heart." His voice broke. "Then maybe I'd finally leave something good behind." Emily felt her knees weaken. "I don't know what to say." "Then say nothing yet," he murmured. "Think, pray, hate me if you must. But understand, this isn't about desire. It's about meaning. I want a life to outlive me, and I trust you more than anyone." The firelight flickered between them, throwing shadows across the walls like fading memories. She stared at him, this powerful man reduced to frailty, begging not for riches, but remembrance. A man who had lost everything except the hope of love, continuing in another form. Tears spilled down her cheeks. "Sir, I'm just a maid. I have no family, no wealth, no name." "Why me?" "Because," he said softly, "you still believe in goodness. And that's all I want my child to inherit." She stood slowly, clutching her trembling hands. "This is too much, sir. You've been kind. But I've Emily," he whispered, his voice weak but steady. "This isn't kindness I'm asking for. It's courage." He looked down, eyes glistening. "If I die tomorrow, I'll leave behind buildings and bank accounts. But none of them will smile. None will call me father." Something in her heart cracked. The world had given her nothing. No father, no wealth, only struggle. And yet, this man, with everything, was asking for the one thing she had always believed in, the chance to give life meaning. Her mind screamed no, but her soul whispered maybe. She took a deep breath, voice trembling. If I said yes, what would happen to the child?" His eyes softened. "They would have everything I can give. Security, education, a home. But I would make sure you are never forgotten as the mother who gave me peace." She looked down, tears blurring her vision. "I need time, sir, to think, to understand." He nodded. "Take all the time you need. The heart can't be rushed, not when it's deciding something eternal." That night, Emily sat by her window, the rain tapping softly against the glass. Her reflection stared back at her, a simple maid caught in a story too big for her. Her mother's words echoed in her mind. "Love isn't always romance, Emily. Sometimes it's the courage to give when it costs you everything." She pressed her hands together and prayed. Not for money, not for safety, but for clarity, to know what was right. Sleep came slowly, and when it did, it brought dreams of Jonathan, not sick, not dying, but smiling in a garden, holding a baby with her eyes. When morning light touched her face, she knew her heart had already answered. The next day, she went to his study. He looked up, surprised to see her standing there, hands clasped in front of her chest. "Miss Carter?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "I've made my decision." He rose carefully, his cane trembling beneath his weight. And she met his gaze, no longer with fear, but with quiet resolve. "I'll do it, sir, not for your money, not for your name, but because no one deserves to die with their heart unfulfilled." Jonathan's eyes glistened. For the first time in years, he wept. He reached for her hand, not possessively, but reverently. "Thank you," he whispered, voice shaking. "You've just given my soul a reason to wait for tomorrow. If you were Emily, poor, pure, and faced with a dying man's impossible wish, would you have said yes? Comment below your honest thoughts." The days at Blake Estate passed like whispered prayers, quiet, predictable, and filled with a strange kind of peace that Emily hadn't known in years. Each morning, she'd dust the mahogany halls, arrange fresh flowers in the parlor, and bring tea to the study door where Jonathan Blake spent most of his time alone. At first, he said very little, a curt nod, a faint thank you. But slowly, the silences began to stretch into conversations. "Miss Carter," he said one morning, not looking up from his desk, "do you always hum while you work?" Emily froze, the tray in her hands trembling slightly. "I'm sorry, sir. It's a habit. I can stop if it disturbs you." "Disturb?" He finally lifted his eyes, a ghost of amusement in them. "It's the only sound in this house that doesn't remind me of death." "Don't stop. That was the first time she saw him almost smile. As the weeks passed, Emily learned to read the mansion's moods, the way the curtains fluttered when the sea breeze came in, the way Jonathan's cough echoed late at night, the way his voice softened whenever she entered the room. But she also saw the weariness behind his eyes. He'd often stare at the fire too long, lost in thought, fingers grazing the wedding ring he still wore, the one belonging to a woman she'd never seen. One afternoon, while cleaning the upper library, Emily noticed a locked cabinet half hidden behind heavy curtains. She wouldn't have touched it, except the key had been left in the lock. Curiosity tugged at her, and before she could stop herself, she turned it. Inside were photographs, dozens of them. A young Jonathan Blake, smiling, arms around a woman with auburn hair and radiant eyes. Her name was engraved on a silver frame, Clara Morgan Blake. Emily lifted one picture, the two of them on a sailboat, laughing under the sun. He looked alive then, full of light. The man she knew now was only a shadow. A voice behind her made her spin around. "Put that back." Jonathan stood in the doorway, face pale, but eyes sharp. His cane struck the floor once, hard. "I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean to pry. It was curiosity is a dangerous thing, Miss Carter." She quickly returned the photo. She was beautiful, she whispered. "I'm sorry for your loss." He froze. The words seemed to pierce him, not because they were intrusive, but because they were sincere. "She was everything," he murmured. "And I lost her because of me." The tremor in his voice made Emily's heart ache. "You don't have to tell me, sir." But he did. Perhaps for the first time in years, he wanted someone to listen. "I was too busy chasing money," he said softly. "Too busy proving I could buy the world." She wanted a family. I kept saying, "Soon, Clara, soon." But soon never came. Then, the accident. His voice cracked. She was gone before I ever learned what truly mattered. Emily's eyes filled with tears. "I'm so sorry." He turned away, staring at the window where sunlight filtered weakly through dust. She wanted children, Miss Carter, a home filled with laughter. Now I have neither. Emily didn't know what to say. The silence between them grew heavy, filled with everything unsaid. Finally, he exhaled and said quietly, "Do you believe in second chances, Miss Carter?" She met his gaze. "I believe kindness gives us one, even when life doesn't." He stared at her, as if memorizing her face. Then, in a voice softer than the wind, "You're different from the others. You don't see my wealth, do you?" She shook her head. "All I see is a man who's hurting." That night, long after everyone had gone to bed, Emily sat awake in her small quarters, staring at the ceiling. She couldn't stop thinking about him, the sadness in his tone, the guilt in his eyes. He wasn't cruel. He was just lost. And maybe, just maybe, he didn't want to die that way. The next morning, when she brought his breakfast, he surprised her. "Sit," he said, motioning to the chair opposite him. She hesitated. "Sir, sit, please. For once, I'd like to have breakfast with someone who doesn't fake their smiles." She smiled shyly and obeyed. The silence between them was different now, warm, fragile. He gestured toward her coffee. "Tell me something, Miss Carter. What keeps you here? It can't be the salary. You could work anywhere." She hesitated before answering. "I stay because this place needs someone to care for it. And maybe, so do you?" Jonathan stared at her for a long moment, something breaking quietly in his chest. After a while, he said softly, "You remind me of the life I could have had." That evening, the rain fell hard against the windows, the thunder rolling through the mansion like a heartbeat. Emily had just finished her chores when she heard a crash from upstairs. She ran to Jonathan's study and found him on the floor, breathing heavily, clutching his chest. "Mr. Blake." He tried to wave her off. "Just dizzy." "No." She helped him back to the chair, her hands trembling. "You need a doctor." He looked at her, eyes glassy with pain. "No doctor can fix what's already breaking." "Don't say that," she pleaded. "You're not alone anymore." Her words silenced him. Something in them, her tone, her tears, reached deeper than medicine ever could. For a moment, he just stared at her, seeing in her the one thing his billions could never buy: purity. When his breathing steadied, he whispered, "You shouldn't waste your kindness on a dying man." She met his eyes. Maybe that's exactly who needs it most. Later that night, Jonathan sat by the fire again, his hand resting on the edge of the chair where she'd held him. Her scent lingered faintly in the air, soft, innocent, comforting. He thought of Clara, of lost dreams, and of the ache of dying with nothing to leave behind. For the first time in a decade, he prayed, not for himself, but for guidance. When dawn came, he made a decision. He would ask her something no man should ever ask, not for desire, not for pleasure, but for legacy. His dying wish was no longer about wealth or memory. It was about leaving behind one piece of his soul through her heart. If you learned the person you cared for was dying and asked you for something that could change your life forever, would you say yes? He had everything except an heir. She had nothing except a heart pure enough to grant a dying man's final wish. Before we start, comment below. Would you forgive someone who once humiliated you? Tap like and subscribe for more stories that touch the soul. The gates of the Blake estate rose like iron trees against the gray morning sky. Silent and cold, Emily Carter gripped her small duffel bag as the taxi drove away, its tires crackling over the gravel. The world beyond the gate seemed like another universe, far away from her little apartment in the Bronx, far away from her mother's fading voice telling her to stay kind, no matter how cruel life gets. She had never seen a house this large before. The mansion stretched endlessly, its windows dark, its stone walls lined with ivy that clung like ghosts, refusing to let go. Rumor had it that the owner, Jonathan Blake, hadn't stepped outside in years. Some said he was mad. Others whispered he was dying. Emily wasn't sure what to believe. All she knew was that this job was her only chance to save her mother's medical bills. "Good morning, miss." The voice startled her. A tall woman in a black dress and apron stood by the door, arms folded. "You must be Emily. Follow me." Emily nodded, stepping inside. The air smelled of cedar and silence. No laughter, no music. Just the faint ticking of an unseen clock. Paintings of stern men lined the hall, all sharing the same sharp jawline, the same watchful eyes. "Mr. Blake doesn't like noise," the head maid said curtly. "You'll clean the east wing. You'll never enter his study unless called. And you must never disturb him." "Yes, ma'am," Emily whispered. She had been working for only 2 hours when she felt it, that strange, heavy presence, as if the house itself was watching her. She was dusting the library shelves when the door creaked behind her. A low, hoarse voice cut through the silence. "Who told you to clean in here?" Emily turned sharply. Standing by the doorway was Jonathan Blake himself. He looked older than she expected, not from age, but from exhaustion. His once dark hair was streaked with silver, his skin pale beneath sharp cheekbones. He wore a robe and leaned slightly on a cane, though his eyes, deep, cold gray, looked as if they could still command empires. "I'm sorry, sir," Emily stammered, clutching her duster. "I didn't mean to intrude." "Mrs. Dalton said the East Wing." "I said the East Wing," he interrupted softly, "not my library." The silence that followed was unbearable. Emily felt her cheeks burn. "I'll leave at once, sir." He studied her for a moment longer, the plain maid's uniform, the trembling hands, the nervous eyes that somehow carried warmth. Something in his expression softened. "Just a fraction. Next time," he murmured, turning away. "Knock first." When the door closed behind him, Emily exhaled shakily. She'd seen billionaires on television, confident, charming, loud. But Jonathan Blake was none of those things. His presence was like winter itself, beautiful, distant, and painful to touch. That night, as she cleaned the dining room, she overheard whispers from the other maids. "They say he doesn't have an heir. Maybe that's why he's so bitter. What's the point of billions when you'll die alone? He's had a dozen nurses and companions. None last more than a week, because he's cursed. One whispered dramatically. Emily said nothing, though she couldn't stop thinking about him. Was it really a curse, or just loneliness? The next morning, she was polishing the staircase rail when she noticed a door slightly ajar. Jonathan's study. Inside, she saw sunlight cutting across the desk, revealing scattered medical files. A white envelope lay half open, with hospital letterhead. She froze. The words heart failure, stage 4 caught her eye. She stepped closer, reading just enough to see prognosis. Less than 1 year. A voice behind her made her jump. Do you make a habit of reading your employer's private files, Miss Carter? Jonathan stood by the door, leaning on his cane. Emily's heart pounded. I know, sir. I was dusting, and the wind doesn't open envelopes. Her throat tightened. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have looked. He stared at her for a long time, as if searching her face for mockery. But there was none, only fear and sadness. Most people, he said slowly, pretend not to care when they find out a man is dying. They act polite, but you look sad. Why? Emily swallowed hard. Because I don't think anyone should die alone, sir. That simple answer broke something in him. For a moment, his eyes flickered. Not anger, not pride, but vulnerability. He turned away, gripping his cane. You may continue your work, he muttered. And thank you for your honesty. When he left, Emily's hands trembled. She hadn't meant to cross a line, but somehow, she felt she had stepped into a secret part of his world, one where pain lived quietly behind wealth and walls. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the estate, she found herself humming softly while arranging flowers in the hall. The melody was one her mother used to sing before her illness, soft, sweet, and full of prayer. Unbeknownst to her, Jonathan stood at the top of the stairs, listening. For the first time in years, the emptiness in the mansion didn't feel so heavy. When she finished, she turned and nearly dropped the vase when she saw him. Oh, I'm sorry, sir. I didn't mean. Don't apologize, he said quietly. It's been a long time since this house had music. She smiled nervously. My mother says music keeps the heart alive. Your mother sounds wiser than most doctors. They shared the faintest of smiles. Brief, delicate, gone too soon. But it was a start. Later that night, Jonathan sat alone in his study, staring at the flickering fireplace. The doctor's words echoed in his mind. You may not make it to the end of the year. Mr. Blake, if you have unfinished business, now is the time. Unfinished business. A legacy, a name to carry on when his heart stopped beating. He closed his eyes, remembering the maid's kind face, her trembling voice saying no one should die alone. For the first time, the dying billionaire wondered if heaven had sent him a reason to hope again. If you were in Emily's place, working for a man everyone feared, yet seeing his hidden pain, would you stay and help him heal, or protect your own heart? Share your thoughts in the comments below.
Winter arrived quietly over Manhattan. The once green gardens of the Blake estate were now covered in a soft blanket of snow, and the world seemed to move slower, as if holding its breath for what was to come. Emily stood by the frosted window, her hands pressed to her abdomen. She had known for 2 weeks, but hadn't found the words to tell him yet. Every morning she'd wake with a mixture of fear and wonder. It's really happening. A new life was growing inside her. His life. Their life. But each day she also noticed Jonathan's strength slipping further away. His steps were slower, his voice quieter. He had to stop halfway up the stairs now, and his coughs lasted longer. That morning, she found him by the fire, wrapped in a dark wool blanket, staring at the flames. His eyes looked distant, but when she entered, they lit up instantly. "You're up early," he said with a faint smile. "The sunrise hasn't even warmed the windows yet." "I couldn't sleep," she replied, taking the seat beside him. He studied her face for a moment, then said softly, "You look different. Glowing, almost." Her throat tightened. The words hovered on her tongue, but fear kept them locked there. "Maybe it's just the firelight," she whispered. He reached for her hand, his fingers trembling slightly. "Emily, if you ever decide to go, before I—" He hesitated, swallowing. "I'd understand." She blinked, startled. "Why would I go?" "Because you deserve a life outside these walls, a world that doesn't end with me." Her heart clenched. She turned his hand over in hers. "Jonathan, you asked for one thing, to leave behind a piece of yourself." He nodded slowly. "Well," Emily whispered, her voice breaking, "you already have." His eyes widened. He searched her face, disbelief flickering across his features. "Emily, do you mean—" She nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "Yes, I'm pregnant." For a long moment he didn't speak. His lips parted, but no sound came. Then his eyes filled with tears, and a shuddered laugh escaped him, half joy, half sorrow. "Oh, God," he whispered, covering his mouth with trembling fingers. "You've done it! You've really—" He couldn't finish. His voice broke completely. Emily knelt beside him, taking his hands in hers. "You're going to be a father, Jonathan." He let out a quiet, tearful laugh. "A father!" He said the word as if it were a foreign language he'd waited his whole life to speak. His gaze fell on her belly, still flat, but already precious. "That child, that's my legacy, my redemption." "No," she said softly. "That child is ours." From that moment on, Jonathan changed. His pain didn't vanish, but his spirit grew lighter. He began to smile again, real smiles that reached his eyes. He started keeping a journal, writing letters for the child to read one day. He even went back to the piano, asking Emily to sing softly as he played. Sometimes she'd catch him whispering to her belly when she thought she wasn't listening. "You're going to be strong like her," he'd murmur, "and kind, always kind." But beneath his joy, Emily sensed the truth. He was fading faster now. The doctor began visiting twice a week, and one evening, after the doctor left, Emily found Jonathan sitting alone, his face pale and drawn. He looked up at her and smiled weakly. "Don't look at me like that. You're getting worse," she said quietly. "I'm just running out of time to thank you properly," he replied. She knelt beside him. "You already have. Every time you smile, it's enough." He took her hand and pressed it to his heart. "Promise me something. Anything. When I'm gone, don't let this house die with me. Fill it with laughter, with warmth. Let our child know it wasn't built by money, but by love." Tears streamed down her cheeks. "I promise." He smiled faintly. "You know, I used to believe dying was a punishment, but now it feels like the end of a beautiful story." "You're not dying yet," she whispered fiercely. "Not while your heart still beats in me." He chuckled softly. "You always say things that make me wish I had more years to hear them." Spring arrived early that year. The cherry blossoms bloomed just outside the garden gate, filling the air with color and hope. Emily's belly had begun to show, and with it came a quiet joy that seemed to wrap the estate in life again. The staff adored her. They began calling her Mrs. Blake, though she'd never asked them to. Jonathan watched her from the veranda one afternoon, sunlight spilling over her hair like gold. He said, "You're beautiful." She turned, laughing softly. "I look like a balloon." He shook his head. "You look like the future." She joined him at the table, setting a glass of juice before him. "Drink." He smirked. "You're bossy. Someone has to keep you alive." Their eyes met, And in that glance, everything unsaid became clear. This wasn't just obligation anymore. It was love. Quiet, unspoken, but powerful. Jonathan reached across the table, fingers brushing hers. "You've turned my last days into the best ones I've ever lived. And you've made me believe love doesn't always come in the way we expect," she whispered. That evening, as the sky turned crimson, Jonathan sat with her by the fire again. He looked at her, her hand on her belly, her eyes glowing with life, and felt peace settle over him like a gentle tide. "Do you think the baby will remember me?" he asked. Emily smiled sadly. "Every day. Because I'll make sure they know the man who gave them life was more than a billionaire. He was a good man." He reached for her hand one last time that night. "If heaven allows me one wish, it'll be to watch you both from wherever I end up." That night, Emily dreamed again. Of the sea, of laughter, of Jonathan standing on the shore, holding a child in his arms, waving at her as the morning sun broke through the clouds. When she awoke, the bed beside her was cold, and something inside her knew. Would you trade years of an ordinary life for a few months of a love that changes everything? Let's talk about it in the comments.
The morning Jonathan Blake passed away began in perfect silence. Emily woke to find the house unusually still. The air felt heavier, the light dimmer, as if the mansion itself already knew. Her heart pounded as she called his name. "Jonathan?" No answer. She rushed to his room. The door was slightly open. He was sitting in his chair by the window, the early sun painting his silver hair with gold. His eyes were closed, his face peaceful, a small smile frozen on his lips. In his lap was the letter he'd been writing for weeks, the one for their child. Her knees gave out. She fell beside him, pressing her forehead to his hand. It was cold. "No, no, please," she whispered, shaking. "You promised me one more spring." The tears came fast, unstoppable, but through the grief she noticed something tucked beneath his hand, a sealed envelope with her name written in his elegant script, Emily. Hands trembling, she opened it. "My dearest Emily, if you are reading this, it means I've finally gone to rest. Don't cry too long. You gave me more life than any doctor could. I used to believe legacy was built from concrete and glass, but now I know it's built from love, from the hands that hold you when you're weak, from the heart that believes in you when you can't. Our child will be my final gift to this world, but you, Emily, are the miracle that made it possible. I have left everything in your name, the estate, the trust, the future, not because of pity, but because you earned it with grace, faith, and courage. And when our child asks one day who their father was, tell them this: he was a man saved by love. Always, Jonathan." By the time she finished, her tears had soaked the letter. She pressed it to her chest, sobbing into the quiet room. For a long while she sat there, not as a maid, not as a caretaker, but as a woman who had loved and been loved completely. Then she whispered through trembling lips, "You kept your promise. You gave me forever." A week later, the funeral took place under a gentle rain. The city's elite came dressed in black, but none of them knew the man as Emily did. When the priest asked if anyone wished to speak, she stepped forward, her belly already rounding beneath her black dress. She faced the crowd, powerful men, women with diamonds, reporters whispering, and said softly, Jonathan Blake was known as a billionaire, but to me, he was a man who learned that the richest life is one filled with love. Her voice wavered. He gave me a home, and he gave me hope, but most of all, he gave me the chance to bring his heart back into this world. There was silence. Then someone began to cry quietly. Even the priest's voice shook as he said the final prayer. As they lowered the casket into the earth, Emily whispered, "Rest now, my love. I'll keep your promise alive." Months passed. Spring returned just as he said it would. The garden bloomed again, bursting with the scent of roses and rain. And in the same room where he had once prayed for a legacy, Emily gave birth to a baby boy. It was a long, grueling night. The midwife held her hand, urging her through the pain. But as the thunder rolled outside, Emily thought of Jonathan, his laugh, his kindness, his hope. When she finally heard the baby cry, she broke into tears. The midwife smiled, placing the child in her arms. "It's a boy." She looked down at the tiny face, eyes closed, skin soft as silk, a faint trace of Jonathan's nose. She whispered through her tears, "Hello, my little miracle." The baby stirred, making a small sound that almost sounded like a sigh. "Welcome home," she whispered.
Days later, she sat by the same window where Jonathan had taken his last breath, rocking their son gently in her arms. The letter he had written for the baby was on the table beside her. She unfolded it again, reading aloud softly so her child could hear his father's voice through her own. "My child, when you are old enough to read this, you will know I am not with you, but I will always be near. In the laughter of the waves, in the sunlight that touches this house, in the love your mother carries inside her heart. She is stronger than anyone you will ever meet. Be kind to her. Protect her as she protected me. And remember, being rich means nothing if you aren't good. Live well, love deeply, and never forget that you were born from both." Emily's tears fell again, not of sorrow, but of gratitude. She looked down at the baby in her arms and whispered, "Your father was a good man. He didn't just leave behind wealth, he left behind love." The baby cooed softly, eyes fluttering open for the first time. For a brief second, she could swear she saw Jonathan's gaze looking back at her. Years passed. The Blake estate became alive again, full of laughter, music, and warmth. The boy, named Eli Blake, grew strong and kind, just like his father had hoped. Every night before bed, Emily would take him to the garden and tell him stories about his father, how he'd once been powerful but found his heart in humility. When Eli turned 5, he asked, "Mama, do you miss him?" She smiled through tears. "Every day. But I also see him, right here." She pressed her hand to Eli's chest. "In you." Eli thought for a moment, then said innocently, "Then he's not really gone." "No," she whispered, kissing his forehead. "He never was." On the anniversary of Jonathan's passing, Emily returned alone to his grave. The wind was soft, the sky streaked with gold. She placed a single white rose on the marble stone and whispered, "He's growing so fast, Jonathan. You'd be proud." A tear slid down her cheek. "I still keep your promise. This home, this love, this life. You live in everything we do." She stood there for a long while, the breeze playing with her hair, the faint scent of roses drifting through the air. And in that quiet moment, she felt it, not just memory, but presence, as if somewhere beyond the veil, Jonathan Blake was smiling. That night, as the sun dipped below the horizon,
Emily sat in the nursery watching Eli sleep. His tiny chest rose and fell in rhythm with her heartbeat. She whispered, "You are the gift he left me, the proof that love doesn't end, it simply changes form." And for the first time since his death, she didn't cry. She smiled. Because even though Jonathan Blake was gone, the life he had dreamed of was right there, breathing, laughing, and growing. His dying wish had not been his end. It had been her beginning. Do you believe love can outlive death? Not through memory, but through the lives it changes forever? Share your thoughts below, and don't forget to subscribe for more emotional stories like this.